You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
And we'll be watching. Be safe on the campaign trail. John Kerry, thanks for joining us. And we'll be right back.
My next guest is a man who needs no introduction. He is the host of Sunday news program Meet the Press. His newest book, sure to be another bestseller, Wisdom of Our Fathers by Tim Russert, out just in time for Father's Day. Tim Russert, thanks for joining us on Deadline Live.
A real pleasure to be here.
You know, one question. I met you in Boston, by the way, and you gave me a very enthusiastic handshake, and you're a great guy to meet in person. I was working with Fox News at the Democratic National Convention. A question I've always wanted to ask you, Tim, before we get to the book. You asked a question that no establishment media person ever asked of the president and the runner-up in 2004, and that was their involvement in a group called Skull and Bones 322. I got to know, Tim, why did you ask them that question? What were you getting at?
Well, both George W. Bush and John Kerry were involved in college in this fraternity, secret society, whatever, and part of the code that they subscribed to was that they would never talk about it with others other than members. And I was very curious as to how they would react to a question about it. Whether they would come clean and acknowledge, or whether they would hold to their college code. It just fascinated me, and I think it gives us some insight into each of them. And they both were honorable to their code. They wouldn't give up much information. Sure were. Yeah.
What would you have done if they would have gone on to tell you that they do these bizarre rituals and that it is an extension of a German death cult? Would that have dropped your jaw? I guess you didn't expect that.
Well, it may have ended their campaign.
Yeah, and that really kind of shows us kind of what we have with our candidates, huh? Both coming from Eastern establishment schools, both out of Yale, both members of the secret society. It kind of gives us an idea here that we don't have much of a choice who's our president.
Well, it is interesting because George Bush has worked so hard to act and talk and display his Texas roots. But in fact, yeah, you're exactly right. He went to Yale and Harvard.
Have you heard of Bohemian Grove, by the way, their retreat where they wear hoods and gowns or cloaks and do mock sacrifices in front of a 50-foot stone owl, Tim? I mean, that's pretty bizarre. President Bush, a member of that group. Have you been to the Grove, by the way?
I have not. I've been invited, but I've never accepted an invitation. I work on weekends, so while people are running around doing those things, I'm preparing for Meet the Press.
Isn't that pretty bizarre for our world leaders to participate in these types of actions? I mean, I hate to beat this down, but I got to tell you, I'm really scratching my head. These great right-wing Christians involve themselves in these type of activities and behavior.
I think the Bohemian Grove, as I understand it, is pretty bipartisan. They have Democrats and Republicans, liberals, conservatives. So
that's right.
They all must find something of interest, but I'm doing my work.
You know, you were great on David Letterman last night. You were very candid. There's a clip, an old clip of an interview you did with Hunter S. Thompson, starting to make its rounds around the Internet. It was very telling, and I have to say, Hunter S. Thompson had a lot of good insight. If we would have listened to Hunter S. Thompson in 2003 when you did that interview, I think we might have saved ourselves a lot of trouble regarding the war in Iraq.
What did he say? I don't remember.
Well, I have a couple of notes here. One thing he said that I thought was pretty funny is that George W. Bush makes Nixon look like a piker. He also said, and this was interesting, you had used Colin Powell's recent press conference or recent presentation at the United Nations as a way to kind of bolster our going into Iraq, and he didn't buy that. Now, obviously, he knew something that you didn't know, Tim, that Colin Powell's presentation would be completely discredited.
I actually asked Colin Powell about his presentation some months later on Meet the Press, and he acknowledged that there were some things in that presentation that he should not have said, which is very rare in Washington for someone to acknowledge that he had made a mistake. And he went on further to say that it is something that will remain with him for his entire career, and he was not particularly proud of it.
Did you feel burned in a way by a lot of the disinformation that came out leading up to the war?
I didn't, because what I did is ask the questions, and I can't control the answers. But the Sunday before the war in March of 2003, I had the vice president on, and I said, what if we are not greeted as liberators and there's a long, protracted, and bloody insurrection? What if we do not find weapons of mass destruction? What if we do not have enough troops on the ground, and General Shinseki is right? What if there's sectarian violence between Iraq and the Sunnis and the Shiites? What if the oil is not sufficient to pay for the cost of the war, as Paul Wolfowitz said? It's an amazing 7 or 8 minute exchange. E.J. Dionne, the columnist of the Washington Post, said that the best insight into pre-war intelligence and analysis is not a secret document. It was the interview with Vice President Cheney on Meet the Press. I had no way of knowing then that his answers or his judgments would proven to be incorrect, but my only obligation is to ask the right questions, and I think we did.
They actually denied some of the things they said on your show, which would be recorded for posterity, so you again helped us record history, Tim, like you've done so many times. You know, another thing that Hunter S. Thompson said, that he didn't know, you asked him about Osama bin Laden, you were asking about 9/11, he said he didn't know if we'd ever actually had any evidence linking Osama bin Laden to 9/11, and actually the FBI came out and just admitted on a private interview, their spokesperson just admitted that they actually don't have any hard evidence linking Osama bin Laden to 9/11. That's why this isn't included as one of his crimes on his wanted poster. Does that shock you?
No, but if you read the analysis of the FBI reports and the September 11th Commission, the nexus between the hijackers and Al-Qaeda, it's quite strong. And you know, whether or not there's a direct charge to Osama bin Laden is obviously a legal issue.
Do you know he actually he actually denied in a video that we don't get to see here in the United States, one of his first videos, he actually denied having anything to do with this. And then the video that he did, Osama bin Laden did admit to participating in 9/11, we call it the Fat bin Laden video, where he's a good 40 pounds heavier, different kind of a nose, looks again like a phony video. That's really the best proof and the best admission we have from Osama bin Laden that he did 9/11.
I don't have any doubt that the hijackers who were involved in the September 11th hijackings on September 11th and put planes into the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, and but for the heroes on 93 were headed for the Capitol or the White House, were involved and funded by Al-Qaeda.
Tim, do you know that Morgan Reynolds, former chief economist of the Department of Labor under Ronald Reagan, has come out, under George W. Bush has come out and said he thinks 9/11 was an inside job. So has Ray McGovern, CIA analyst who briefed both Bush and Reagan, Paul Craigs-Roberts, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, father of Reaganomics, and among others, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman, who was a former director of advanced space programs development under Ford and Carter. These people all coming out now in this thing they call the 9/11 Truth Movement, saying they believe that not only did our government allow this to happen and cover it up, and polls, Zogby polls, are even reflecting that a lot of Americans believe this as well, but they believe that they had something to do with the attacks. Does that astound you? And these are some pretty heavyweight people. These aren't conspiracy theorists, Tim. These are some heavyweight people that worked under these major administrations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll leave their judgments and opinions to them, and I obviously have done my reporting and offer the truth as I see it.
Well, I mean, you mentioned on Letterman last night that you're objective, and I would like to, and I think a lot of people would like to learn more about this. Obviously, I don't think we got everything out of those investigations, the 9/11 investigations, that we would need in order to determine a multitude of wars.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty important stuff, don't you think, Tim?
Well,
is it possible we can have you get one of these guys on your CNBC program? Tim, are you with me? Tim Russert. Tim Russert.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Something.
Tim, are you with me? Having convenient phone problems with our guest today, Tim Russert. I want to thank you, Tim, for joining us today. And, well, again, we expect you to be objective and to report the news, and that's what we expect, a check and balance from our news reporting as